Welcome back, children of grade 8, for our today's English class. Today, in this session, we are going to see the supplementary reader from our supplementary book, It So Happened, Chapter 9, the title of the chapter, The Comet, written by Jayant Vishnu Narlika. Children, let's see about the author now. What is meant by comet? A comet is an heavenly body. It stays in the skies or in the heavens. As long as it doesn't collide with the earth, everything will be alright. But if there are any chances of this collision, definitely it will be a havoc on the planet. Children, let's watch a video about the comets. What are comets? Comets are small celestial bodies. Even scientists cannot seem to agree on whether comets are dirty snowballs or snow dirt balls because of the mixture of ice, gas and dust that they compress of. They are different from asteroids because they are huge balls of ice and gas. Comet sightings have been recorded since ancient times. In ancient culture, comet sightings were considered bad omens such as the death of nobility, famine, or attack from the heavenly realm. Parts of the comet. The solid ball of a comet is known as nucleus or core. It mostly consists of ice, dust, and dark organic matter. The ice is mostly frozen water but can also be methane, ammonia, or carbon dioxide. When a comet nears the sun, the frozen part of the comet begins to turn to gas, and the gas forms of cloud around the nucleus that is known as coma. Often this cloud is filled with hydrogen and then referred to as the hydrogen cloud. The radiation from the sun also charges the dust particles of the comet, causing it to scatter over 10 million kilometers. The dust tail. This dust tail is the most prominent part of comet seen to the naked eye. Comets can take anywhere from several decades to a few hundred years to complete one orbit around the sun. When it is closest to the sun, it is known as perihelion and the opposite is called as aphelion. Since the earth is relatively close to the sun, we see it during its perihelion. Many comets have been sighted and recorded throughout history. This story, The Comet, is divided into two parts. Chapter 9, Comet 1 and Chapter 10 is the Comet 2. So today we are going to start with Chapter 9, that is the first part of the story, The Comet 1. This story is basically a depiction of a dilemma between rational thinking process versus superstitious. In this story, the main character Datta, he was rational, but his wife Divya was superstitious. Now, which aspect of belief wins at the end? Let's read on and find from the story, The Comet, Part 1, Chapter 9. Children, before reading, let's know something about the author of the story, Mr. Jayant Narlika. Jayant Vishnu Narlika. He was born on 19th July 1938 in Kolhapur, Maharashtra. He was an Indian astrophysicist and professor at Inter-University Center for Astronomy and Astrophysics, Pune. Besides scientific papers, scientific books, and literature in science, he also written science fiction, novels, and short stories in English, Hindi, and Marathi. He also the consultant for science and maths textbooks of NCERT. He has received so many awards like Smith's Prize in the year 1962, Padma Bhushan in the year 1965, Adams Prize in the year 1967, Padma Vibhushan in 2004, and Prix Jules Jossen in the year 2004. The protagonist, that is the main character of this story, Mr. Manoj Datta, he was a Bengali man. He had an ambition of discovering a comet one day. So after his retirement, he was spending most of his time gazing the skies at night in expectation of finding a comet. And one day he did. But this comet created a lot of motion all around the entire world. But there was something specific about this comet. Let me read the story and explain you what this comet had the speciality and what was the problem which was created by this comet. Children, let's start read the ninth chapter from our supplementary reader book. It so happened. The title of the story is The Comet Part 1. Let's start reading the warm-up before you read. A new comet has appeared in the sky and is heading straight for the earth. A head-on collision, which is nearly unavoidable, will mean the end of life on this planet. Scientists and religious leaders react to this situation in two different ways. What happens to the comet? Let's read on the part 1. Dattada, an amateur scientist, can't stay away from the keen-eyed Dibya Sakshu for long. Dibya helps him achieve his secret ambition. Dattada's wife, Indrani Devi, wishes he hadn't found the object of his search. Dattada, an amateur scientist. Amateur means non-professional or non-specialist. Can't stay away from the keen eye Dibya Chakshu. Dibya Chakshu means the name of the Dattada's telescope for long. Dibya helps him achieve his secret ambition. Dattada's wife Indrani Devi wishes he hadn't found the object of his search. Children, let's read the part 1. Let's start the story. Look at the first line. It was a moonless night in December. A burst of cold breeze from the window was enough to disturb the sleep of Indrani Devi. Half awake, she felt for the adjoining pillow, although she knew the answer. Dattada was not there. So he has gone to Hobnob. Hobnob means have a friendly talk or spend time together. With that wretch Dibya. At last he might have bothered to close the door. Even as she muttered her complaints, Indrani Devi could not repress her smile. She knew how utterly oblivious means forgetful, her husband was of the practical problem of living. Didn't his doctor tell him to take special precaution against the cold? But he wouldn't remember to put on a sweater even if it was lying on his bedside chair. How could he when Dibya had put her spell on him? So that's all from this first two paragraphs, children. Let's see the explanation of these two paragraphs now. Children, let's see the glossaries. Adjoining. Adjoining pillow means be next to pillow. Hobnob. Hobnob means spend time together. Writst. Writst means bad. Repress means suppress. Oblivious means forgetful. Spell means magic. Let's see the explanation of these two paragraphs now. The scene is set in the house of Sri Manoj Datta. That was a December night. The burst of cool breeze came through the window and it disturbed the sleep of Indrani Devi. When she woke up, her husband Dattada was not there, and she knew that he must be up on the terrace gazing the stars. But even while complaining, Indrani Devi had her smile which was suppressed, and she knew how forgetful and how unaware her husband was in terms of taking care of his own health. Children, let's read the next paragraph of this story. She picked up the white woolen pullover, wrapped herself in a shawl, and made her way to the roof to break up his tete-a-tete with Dibya. She found them both huddled together eye to eye. At least Dattada was looking into Divya's eyes. When Dattada acquired this telescope, he was so thrilled that he called it Divya Shakshu, divine eye. To Indrani Devi, the telescope was like a designing woman who had ensnared her husband. So she just called it Dibya and the name stuck. To Dattada, the telescope marked the fulfillment of the ambition of a lifetime. As an amateur astronomer, he had longed for enough money to buy good telescope and for enough spare time in which to observe the heavens. He got them both when he retired with ample money. The telescope was duly installed and long were the dark nights that Tattada spent in stargazing. At least Indrani Devi thought so. Children, let's see the glossary here. Tete-a-tete means a private meeting between two persons. Divya Shaksha is the name of the telescope of Tattada. Then next one, third one is ensnared. Ensnared means trapped. Astronomer means an expert of astronomy, the sun, moon, stars and planet, etc. Heavens means skies. Ample means a lot of. So that's all from the meaning. Let's see the explanation of these two paragraphs now. Indrani Devi knew him that Dattada might not be taken the sweater on this whole cold night. So she picked up her woolen pullover and wrapped herself in a shawl and went to the roof. And as she had expected, Dattada was together with Dibya and he was looking into Dibya's eyes. Children, as I already told you, Dibya is not a woman. It is the name of a telescope. That is Divya Chakshu. It means divine eye. Indrani Devi was so jealous of this telescope, Dibya. She always thought about this telescope as a woman who had trapped her husband in her magic. So, the telescope has been called as Dibya by Indrani Devi. To Dattada, this telescope was very precious because it gives a fulfillment of his ambition. His dream was to buy a good telescope after his retirement and spend as much time as possible for him to observe the skies at night. And then after retirement, he got lot of money. He bought a nice telescope and he spent most of his nights in stargazing. Children, that's all from the explanation of those paragraphs. Let's see the next two paragraphs. Here, put on this sweater. Or do you want Babu to order bed rest tomorrow? Like every other amateur astronomer, Dattada had a secret ambition that he would one day discover a new comet. For comets can be new coming as they do from the remote corners of the solar system. Like planets, comets also orbit around the sun, but their orbits are highly eccentric. So, once in a while, a comet comes close to the sun. It has a longish tail that it lit brilliantly by the sunlight and then it recedes into the darkness, not to be seen again for years or for centuries. What chance did he stand with the 8-inch Dibya? Didn't professional astronomers have gigantic telescopes? Dattada was optimistic. He knew that the professionals with their pre-assigned programs would be looking at faint stars and nebulous galaxies. They might miss such an inefficient thing as a comet, which they were not accepting to see anyway. Indeed, astronomers had often discovered new comets which the professional had missed. So let's see the meaning for these two paragraphs now. Children, let's see the glossaries now. First one, Nabin Babu, who is a doctor here. Then, eccentric. Eccentric means unlikely or uncommon. Recedes mean goes back. Recedes mean goes back. Gigantic means very huge. Optimistic, hopeful. Optimistic means hopeful. Nebulous means hazy. Nebulous means hazy. Let's see the explanation of these paragraphs now. Dattada was non-professional astronomer. He was new to this field. But he had a secret ambition that one day he will discover a new comet. Now comets are the heavenly bodies which comes from the remote corners of the solar system. Like a planet, these comets also have an orbit that revolves around the sun. But the comet's orbit and the path of revolution are highly uncommon. So once in a while the comet comes close to the sun. And when it comes close to the sun, it gets a long tail of fire that was lit by the sun. And then slowly it goes back into the darkness again. And then for the few years or for the few centuries, we cannot see the comet again. If the astronomers are professional astronomers who had big telescopes, did Dattada had any chance of finding a comet? With his small 8-inch telescope named Dibya, but Dattada was very optimistic, that is, he was a hopeful person. He knew that what professionals wouldn't do, he would do it one day. But professionals are busy with programs and other pre-assigned projects. And therefore, in order to see the stars and galaxies, they sometimes miss the comets. And in history also, so many amateur astronomers, that is non-professional astronomers, they discovered some new comets which the professionals had missed it. Children, let's start reading the next two paragraphs. And it looked to Dattada that tonight was going to be a big night. For against the background of the same old stars, Dattada had detected a faint stranger. He re-examined the charts with him and checked his dibya for any smudges on the optics. Did some calculation of his pocket calculator in torchlight, for though absent-minded about daily course, he was meticulous in his observations. Yes, there can be no mistake. What he was looking at had not been there earlier, and it did look like a new comet. Let's see the glossaries here. Smudges. Smudges means spots or marks. Spots or marks. Meticulous. Meticulous means exact or carefully. Meticulous means exact or carefully. So on this particular night, Dattada had high hopes because on the background of those old stars he had seen every day, he detected a new stranger over there. He re-examined and rechecked with his charts with him. He also cleaned his lens of his telescope to remove any smudges, and also he did some calculation on his pocket calculator. And also he may be absent-minded in his daily routine and in his daily work. But when it came to observation, he was very careful and exact. And then he was sure he didn't do any mistake in knowing that there was a new comet which he had discovered. But it was not there earlier, but today he could find it. 2 days later, the Ananda Bazar Patrika came out with the news. Kolkata man discovers a new comet from our special correspondent. Sri Manoj Datta was resident on the north outskirts of Calcutta, was claimed to have discovered a new comet. He has seen the comet on the last 2 nights and has informed the Indian Institution of Astrophysics at Bangalore of its whereabouts. The IIA runs a 90-inch telescope, the biggest in Asia, at Kavalur. If it confirms Datta's finding, it will be the high point in his lifelong career as amateur astronomer. Datada, as he is affectionately called by his friends and admirers, estimates that the comet would be clearly visible to the naked eye in the next few months. He gives all credit for his discovery to his 8-inch telescope, which he calls Dibya. Just 2 days later, after the surety of his discovery, there was a news in a newspaper called Ananda Bazar Patrika that it had a headline that it is a Calcutta man discovers a new comet. In this news, it also describes that after his discovery, Dattara has informed IIA, that is Indian Institute of Astrophysics at Bangalore, and if IIA confirms his discovery with the 90-inch telescope, then Datta's findings will be a high point in his lifelong career as an amateur astronomer. Thereafter, it took just 1 week for Comet Datta to be recognized and so named. For the IIA confirmed the findings and communicated it worldwide, and according to the accepted practice, the new comet was named after its discoverer. This brought it in unwelcome publicity to the introvert Dattara. There were numerous and functions to attend. Returning from one such ceremony, Dattara muttered to himself in disgust, I almost wish I had not discovered this comet. To his surprise, Indrani Devi agreed, I wish the same, though not for the same reason. May I ask why you wish I had not discovered this comet? Dattara asked. Children, let's see the glossary here. First word, introvert. Introvert means shy person. The next word, disgust. Disgust means strong dislike. Disgust means strong dislike. Let's move on to the Now, within a week, IIA also confirmed Dattara's findings, and they told worldwide this new comet will be named as Comet Datta because it was a practice or a norm that it should be named as after its discoverer. And soon with it came a lot of publicity for a shy person like Dattara. He hated to attend receptions and functions. And while he returning such a ceremony, he just discussed to his wife Indrani Devi that he wished that he never discovered this comet. Indrani Devi also agreed it, but she had a different reason for this. Comets bring ill luck, and I wish a good man like you were not associated with the discovery of one. Indrani Devi said with concern. Dattara laughed. I see that even an MA degree has not cured of your superstitions. There is no relation whatever with the arrival of a comet and the calamities of the earth. On the contrary, comets have been scientifically studied and their composition is well understood. There is nothing harmful about them. Well, you will soon see this comet of mine pass harmless by causing no anxiety to anybody. In this last command, however, Dattara was not going to be exactly right. Children, let's see the glossaries here. Correlation. Correlation means connection. Calamities. Calamities means disasters. Now Indrani Devi told her opinion to Dattara, and she feels that comets bring ill luck and bad luck. And therefore she had wished that good man like him should never had discovered one. On listening this, Dattara laughed because he did not agree to the superstitions of Indrani Devi, and he tried to convince her that there was no connection arrival of a comet and the disaster that was happen on the earth, because their composition has been scientifically studied, and it was also proved that comets are not harmful to the earth. And also he told that this comet which he had discovered will also pass harmlessly without cause any damage to the earth. But who knew that this last line was not going to be exactly right? Children, let's start the part 2 of this chapter. The Comet. A British scientist writes a paper based on Dattada's discovery. He and the defense science advisor had a tete-a-tete over an expending calamity. A conference of international experts might yield a clue to the comic puzzle. Children, let's start the second part now. In the spacious dining hall of King's College, Cambridge, the butler whispered deferentially Provost's ear and handed him an envelope on a silver tray. The provost beckoned James and passed on the envelope, saying, "It seems you are wanted urgently in your room." As he made his way towards the beautiful building, James opened the envelope. It contained a brief note. "Dear Dr. Forsyth, the bearer of this note has been instructed to bring you to my office in London tonight. Please come without delay. I am making arrangements for your overnight stay in London. I regret the inconvenience caused to you and request you to keep your visit strictly confidential. Believe me, it is absolutely essential. Yours sincerely, John Macpherson." The signature carried the designation underneath Defense Science Advisor, Her Majesty's Government. Impending means close or near. Children, let's see the glossaries of this page. First one, butler. Butler means a chief man servant in the King's College, Cambridge. Differentially means respectfully. Provost. Provost means head of the college. Beckoned. Beckoned means signaled. Beckoned means signaled. Brief means short note. I'll repeat. Butler means chief man servant in King's College. Differentially means respectfully. Provost means head of the college. Beckoned means signaled. Brief means short. The beginning of the second part, the scene begins in the dining hall of King's College, where in the dining hall the provost and all the head of the college was sitting there, where the butler he is handing over an envelope to the provost. The provost signaled James Forsyth. He was a British scientist and he had a paper written about the Dattada's discovery. The provost gave to James and told him to go to his room urgently. He went to his room and he opened the envelope. It was written by John Macpherson. He was a defense science advisor of the Queen's government. John Macpherson wrote this letter to James Forsyth that he has to come to London office immediately without any delay, that because there was something very important to be discussed and he should keep this trip strictly confidential. And also he said that he will also make arrangements for staying overnight in London. Let's see the next two paragraphs from part 2. A bowler-hatted man near the mantelpiece greeted him as James entered his sitting room. "I am Johnson, sir, security officer at Whitehall." He showed his identity card and continued, "I presume you know why I am here, sir?" "To the extent that is conveyed in this note," replied James. "I knew that it would be useless to ask Johnson for further details. I won't take long." Johnson's Ford Cortina brought them to Whitehall in less than 90 minutes. I took them another 10 minutes to reach the chamber of Sir John Macpherson. Having introduced James to Sir John, the quiet but efficient Johnson slipped out. Dr. Forsyth, my apologies for this imposition on your time. Sir John advanced with outstretched hands. To avoid any further delay, I will come to the point right away. Sir John handed him a typescript. Why, it is my paper to nature. How did you get this original manuscript? James was surprised and somewhat uneasy. Let's see the glossary. A bowler hatted man, which means a man who wore a bowler hat. The next one is mantelpiece. That means a structure which was made around a fireplace. The next word is presume. Presume means suppose or assume. Then slipped out. Slipped out means moved out. Ford Cortina. Ford Cortina is a car made by the Ford company. Next one is imposition means unfair demand that one is obliged to accept. Outstretched. Outstretched means stretched out for the handshake. Typescripts. Typescript means a typed copy of text. Then last one is manuscripts. Manuscript means a document. When James reached his room, he saw a person named Johnson, who was the security officer who came there to take James to the London office. James travelled in Ford Cortina. It was a car, and he reached there within 90 minutes. And in another 10 minutes, he reached the chamber of Sir John Macpherson, who had written the letter and called him there. So Sir John Macpherson, he did not want to waste his time. So he immediately come to the point. So he handed over a document to James Forsyth. On seeing the document, James was really surprised because this was the original document that he gave to the paper called Nature. This document had mentioned about the comet which Dattada was discovered. But James couldn't understand how come John got hold of this original document when he had given the document to the publisher of the newspaper. Sir John saw his anxiety and continued, Taylor, the editor of Nature, is the friend of mine. I had asked Nature to publish it without delay since it was very important. James looked puzzled. I agree that it is important. So important, in fact, that it must never be published. That is, if what you say is correct. Sir John lit his pipe. James would never have tolerated aspersion on the accuracy of his work or the implied order that it must be suppressed. But he knew Sir John to be a respected scientist and was willing to hear him out. Please do not misunderstand me, Dr. Forsyth. I met Taylor today at lunch in club, where he showed me your paper. I still retain enough interest in astronomy, and I asked for my opinion before sending it to the professionals referee. I immediately realized that your results has been profound implication if it is correct. Children, let's see the glossary of these passages. First one, aspersions. Aspersion means criticism. Then referee. Referee means a judge. Then profound implication. Profound implication means deep effect. So aspersion means criticism. Referee means a judge. Profound implication means deep effect. Now, Sir John clarified to the editor of the newspaper named Taylor, friend of Sir John. And when he received the paper from James, he immediately showed it to his friend Sir John because they were friends. When Sir John saw it, he thought it should never to be published because the paper which James has written, which was important thing about the comet that should not be published ever. But James was absolutely sure that what he had written was correct. But he want to hear about what Sir John want to tell about this matter. He said if this paper reaches the people, definitely it will create a negative impact on the people who will read it. Children, let's read the next passages from part 2. Let me assure you, Sir John, that is correct. I stake my reputation on it. James could not contain himself anymore. Do you realize what will happen if Comet Datta collides with the Earth? The effects will be catastrophic. That is why he have taken extra care to verify my calculations. Bearing rare circumstances, the collision is inevitable. James was confident, but Sir John picked out the one qualifying phrase. What are those rare circumstances? Well, it might collide with some asteroid before reaching here, or it might just slit up when near the sun, or it might evaporate. But one cannot count on these circumstances. We have to proceed on the assumption that Comet Datta will collide with the Earth. Cometary collisions are expected to occur once in 10 million years, but now we know that the next one will occur in a year. 10 months to be precise, interjected James. Thank you for the correction. Do you realize that we have only 10 months of survival left for the entire living species on the earth? Don't you think you have to do something to stop all this? Children, let's see the glossaries from these passages. Stake means bet. I bet. Stake means bet. James could not contain. Could not contain means could not control. Could not contain means could not control. Catastrophic. Catastrophic means disastrous. Catastrophic means disastrous. Bearing. Bearing means except for. Bearing means except for. Inevitable. Inevitable means unstoppable. Asteroid. Asteroid means is a rocky heavenly body which orbits the sun. A rocky heavenly body which orbits the sun. That is an asteroid. Then fortuitous. Fortuitous means happening by chance. Then cometary collisions. Cometary collisions means collisions with the comets. Cometary collisions means collisions with the comets. Precise means exact. Precise means exact. Children, now here in this last part, here comes the secret of Comet Datta. And it said that the Comet Datta will collide on the earth. When this collision takes place, then the entire species and the living being will be wiped out or they'll be dead. Then there will be big disaster. So Sir John did not want this news to be published in the newspaper because it will create a big havoc or it will create anxiety and nervousness among the people. And the James, on the other hand, he's tried to convince Sir John that his calculation was absolutely correct. And as per the calculation, within 10 months, this collision will happen. Unless these rare circumstances. And the rare circumstances were, if in case it might collide with any other asteroid on its path, or it might just split up when it's near to the sun, or it might evaporate, or anything like that. But James, he doesn't want to trust these rare circumstances. He was still thinking about the worst. They had only 10 months of survival on the earth, and they both should come out with a solution to stop this disaster and think about how to revert this collision. A fleeting smile crossed James' face, just like a civil servant, as if we are facing here a minor breakdown of law and order. He thought to himself. Aloud he said, "How, may I ask? Can we prevent this natural catastrophe? I don't know, but we have no option but to try. I think we need more than two brains to handle this situation. It is essential to call an urgent meeting of experts from all over the world to think of a countermeasure and, of course, in total secrecy. Think panic in the world if this dreadful news leaks out." Sir John glanced at the manuscript in James' hand. "My suppressing this paper will not hide the truth, Sir John," James said. "There are others who will arrive at the same conclusion sooner or later." Children, let's see the glossaries for these passages. Fleeting. Fleeting means short. Catastrophe means a disaster. Countermeasure. Countermeasure means stop in the opposite direction or action in the opposite direction. That is known as countermeasure. Hearing Sir John's opinion, there was a short smile on James' face. He thought that it was a mere breaking of law and order. It was a minor thing which can be tackled. And so Sir John asked James how he is going to tackle this natural disaster. Sir John had the opinion that only these two cannot tackle this situation. It was necessary to call for a meeting of all the experts all around the world who can think, give solution for this situation. And this meeting should totally be in secrecy. If this news of collision breaks out, then people will get panicking around the world. They'll be anxious, they'll be nervous, and completely the world become chaos. And then James told to John that just for suppressing will not hide the truth, because there were many sooner or later come up with the conclusion as well, and it cannot be hidden from public for long. And that's all from the explanation. Let's see the last paragraph of the story. No, do not suppress it, but tone it down. Add many ifs and buts to make your conclusion appear not so certain. I will exert my influence with friends in other countries to make them exercise a similar restraint for a while. For how long? Until this rich comet is safely out of the way. Let us spend some time now to plan the details of this international conference. Shall we call it in a week's time here? A week to plan such an important secret conference of international experts. James thought it an impossible task, but Sir John disagreed. He began to spell out details. So here, Sir John made a suggestion to James that they need not suppress or completely stop this news, but they can tone it down. That means they can make it less harsh. And there are lots of ifs and buts so that it doesn't appear to be certain, so that it appears to be a doubt in the collision. And he also tells that he convey this matter to the other friends in the other countries to make a similar kind of control over the news. Also, he wanted international conference to be held within the week's time. James thought that it was certainly impossible. Yet, Sir John disagreed and he started to work on the detail of this conference. That's all from the story from our supplementary reader, Chapter 9, The Comet, Part 1. Read the story from your supplementary reader and learn the question answers and write your classwork neatly.